Chapter 17, Extinguishing the Forest Fire. King Parikshit, after hearing of the chastisement of Kaliya, inquired from Sukadev Goswami as to why Kaliya left his beautiful land and why Garuda was so antagonistic to him. Sukadev Goswami informed the king that the island known as Nagalaya was inhabited by serpents and that Kaliya was one of the chief serpents there. Being accustomed to eating snakes, Garuda used to come to this island and kill many serpents at will. Some of them he actually ate, but some were unnecessarily killed. The reptile society became so disturbed that their leader, Vasuki, appealed to Lord Brahma for protection. Lord Brahma made an arrangement by which Garuda would not create a disturbance. On each half-moon day, the reptile community would offer a serpent to Garuda. The serpent was to be kept underneath a tree as a sacrificial offering to Garuda. Garuda was satisfied with this offering, and therefore he did not disturb any other serpents. But gradually, Kaliya took advantage of the situation. He was unnecessarily puffed up by the volume of his accumulated poison, as well as by his material power, and he thought, why should Garuda be offered the sacrifice? He then ceased offering any sacrifice. Instead, he himself ate the offering intended for Garuda. When Garuda, the great devotee carrier of Vishnu, understood that Kaliya was eating the offered sacrifices, he became very angry and rushed to the island to kill the offensive serpent. Kaliya tried to fight Garuda and faced him with his many hoods and poisonous sharp teeth. Kaliya attempted to bite him, and Garuda, the son of Tarksha, in great anger and with great force, befitting the carrier of Lord Vishnu, struck the body of Kaliya with his effulgent golden wings. Kaliya, who is also known as Kadrusuta, son of Kadru, immediately fled to the lake known as Kaliya Harada, which lay within the Yamuna river and which Garuda could not approach. Kaliya took shelter within the water of the Yamuna for the following reason. Just as Garuda went to the island of the Kaliya snake, he also used to go to the Yamuna to catch fish to eat. There was, however, a great yogi known as Sobari Muni who used to meditate within the water there and who was sympathetic with the fish. He asked Garuda not to come there and disturb the fish. Although Garuda was not under anyone's order, being the carrier of Lord Vishnu, he did not disobey the order of the great yogi. Instead of staying and eating many fish, he carried off one big fish, who was their leader. Subari Muni was sorry that one of the leaders of the fish was taken away by Garuda, and thinking of their protection, he cursed Garuda with the following words: henceforward, from this day, if Garuda comes here to catch fish, then, I say this with all my strength, he will be immediately killed. This curse was known only to Kaliya. Kaliya was therefore confident that Garuda would not be able to come there, and so he thought it wise to take shelter of the lake within the Yamuna. But Kaliya's taking shelter of Subari Muni was not successful. He was driven away from the Yamuna by Krishna, the master of Garuda. It may be noted that Garuda is directly related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is so powerful that he is never subject to anyone's order or curse. Actually, the cursing of Garuda, who is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam to be of the stature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, was an offense on the part of Subari Muni. Although Garuda did not try to retaliate, the Muni was not saved from his offensive act against a great Vaishnava personality. Due to this offense, Subari fell down from his yogic position and afterwards became a householder, a sense enjoyer in the material world. The fall down of Subari Muni, who was supposed to be absorbed in spiritual bliss by meditation, is an instruction to the offender of Vaishnavas. When Krishna finally came out of Kaliya's lake, he was seen by all his friends and relatives on the bank of the Yamuna. He appeared before them nicely decorated, smeared all over with chandan pulp, bedecked with valuable jewels and stones, and almost completely covered with gold. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cowherd boys and men, the gopis, Mother Yashoda, Maharaj Nanda, and all the cows and calves, saw Krishna coming from the Yamuna, and it was as though they had recovered their very life. When a person regains his life, Naturally, he becomes absorbed in pleasure and joyfulness. They each in turn pressed Krishna to their chests, and thus they felt a great relief. Mother Yashoda, Rohini, Maharaj Nanda, and the cowherd men became so happy that as they embraced Krishna, they thought they had achieved their ultimate goal of life. Balaram also embraced Krishna, but he was laughing because when everyone else had been so overwhelmed with anxiety, he had known what would happen to Krishna. All the trees on the bank of the Yamuna, along with all the cows, bulls, and calves, were full of pleasure because of Krishna's appearance there. The Brahmana inhabitants of Vrindavan immediately came with their wives to congratulate Krishna and his family members. And because Brahmanas are considered to be the spiritual masters of society, they offer their blessings to Krishna and his family on account of Krishna's release. They also asked Maharaj Nanda to give them some charity on that occasion. Being so pleased by Krishna's return, Maharaj Nanda gave many cows and much gold in charity to the Brahmanas. While Nanda Maharaj was thus engaged, Mother Yashoda simply embraced Krishna and made him sit on her lap while she shed tears continuously. Since it was almost night and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cows and calves, were very tired, they decided to take their rest on the riverbank. In the middle of the night, while they were taking rest, there was suddenly a great forest fire, and it quickly appeared that the fire would soon devour all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. As soon as they felt the warmth of the fire, they immediately took shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he was playing just like their child. They began to say, "Oh dear Krishna, oh Supreme Personality of Godhead, our dear Balaram, reservoir of all strength, please try to save us from this all-devouring and devastating fire. We have no shelter other than you. This devastating fire will swallow us all." Thus they prayed to Krishna, saying that they could not take any shelter other than his lotus feet. Lord Krishna, being compassionate upon his own townspeople, immediately swallowed up the whole forest fire and saved them. This was not impossible for Krishna because he is unlimited. He has unlimited power to do anything he desires. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 17th chapter of Krishna, extinguishing the forest fire.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Miditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Shabadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamanam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashadbhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Horipriye Vansha Golpatarubhyascha Prabha Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. So here we have some background on why Kaliya had left his own land and come to live within the Kaliya, the lake within the Jamuna. And it has to do with Guru's having been cursed by Shaupari Muni. The Garuda, as Prabhupada explained, is not vegetarian, so he sometimes used to eat serpents or fish. So he was eating the serpents, and in the Nagalaya, he'd come and kill many serpents. And that was creating problems for the serpents. They're disrupting their lives. So they appealed to Vasuki. Vasuki appealed to Brahma. And so an arrangement was made, a deal, that Garuda would take one snake on each half-moon day. And then that would be it. One snake would be kept under a tree as a sacrifice. Garuda was satisfied and good. But Kaliya became envious. He was puffed up by having a great stock of poison and being very powerful. So he thought, why should this go to Garuda? Let me take the offering for myself. It seems he was cannibalizing his own, the members of his own serpent community. Although Prabhupada didn't say anything about that. So then Garuda became angry and came to kill Kaliya and struck. There was a battle. Kaliya was fighting with his hoods, and Garuda was striking Kaliya with his powerful golden wings. And Garuda succeeded in driving Kaliya out. And Kaliya fled to this Kaliya rod, which he knew to be unapproachable by Garuda. That also the history is given, that Garuda had sometimes been eating fish there, but there was a Muni, Sopari Muni, who was sympathetic to the fish and was what happened? Let's get it exactly right. Yeah, the sage told him, don't eat the fish. And so Garuda obeyed, but first he snatched off the leader of the fish. All right, I won't go on killing fish, but one last fish, and a big one. So then Sobari Muni was unhappy about that and cursed Garuda. If he ever comes here again, he'll die. So, as Prabhupada points out, that was a Vaishnava aparad. Although one might think, yes, this sage was sympathetic to the fish, but he should have known that Garuda is in a privileged position. He's a direct servant of Lord Vishnu. And instead, Sobri Muni cursed Garuda. And on that account, he later had to fall down. That history is given elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. So at any rate, Kaliya knew that history. He was the only one who knew. And so he took shelter in that place. So then, flashing back again, yes, that was the flashback, coming back again to the main storyline. Krishna's come out of the water after fighting with Kaliya, and all the residents of Vrindavan feel like they've gotten back their life. They're all embracing Krishna, Nanda, Yashoda, and they thought, now we've achieved the ultimate perfection of life. Balaram, of course, was just laughing because he'd known all along that what will this snake do to Krishna? On that occasion also, many Brahmins came to Brahmins and their wives to congratulate Krishna and bless the family. And they also asked for charity. This is what Brahmins do. They offer blessings, they receive charity. And Nanda Maharaj generously gave them so many cows and gold. Then it was practically night, and everyone was tired. It had been a rough day. So they just took rest on the riverbank. Vrindavan, spring or summer, you can just take rest wherever you are. Pleasant atmosphere. They just took rest on the riverbank. But while they were resting, this devastating fire arose, a forest fire. So immediately they turned to Krishna. This is the nature of devotees. Whenever there's some danger, they just naturally turn to Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, please save us. So Krishna swallowed the fire, being compassionate on the Brajvasis. He just swallowed the whole fire. And for Krishna, that's not difficult business. All right, some comments, some questions. Short chapter.
There's no demon involved in forest fire.
No demon involved in the forest fire. No demon is mentioned. No, just forest fire came. Unless the commentators have discovered a demon there. In the text, there's no mention of a demon. Something else? Yes.
Maharaj, it seems to be very subtle, the exchanges between the Vaishnavas. Like you were saying that actually the Muni had committed an aparad to Garuda. The Muni had committed an aparad.
Hold on a second. If you don't speak into the microphone, I can't hear you, and if you do, it's booming. I can't. Maybe turn it down a little bit. Okay, try again.
The exchanges seem to be very subtle in that Prabhupada is pointing out that it was actually an aparad to Garuda.
That wasn't so subtle. He cursed Garuda.
But I'm thinking about the Brahmana who was walking past Rupa Goswami when Rupa Goswami was in meditation. So my question is, sometimes we may think that I'm just calling a spade, or we may evaluate a situation or a devotee's behavior, and then we may be compromising ourselves.
Yeah, therefore we should be careful. If you want to call a spade, better to call a Mayavadi a spade or a Karmi a spade. calling a spade when it's Vaishnavas can get us in trouble. So we should be careful. We should be careful. Vaishnava aparads are toxic. We should be careful. And who appointed us to call a spade, you know? Especially, get on social media and call a spade. Like, why? Am I the representative of truth and dharma for all society? I've been appointed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to call a spade. We should be careful. Something else? Is that all right?
Maharaj, I was reading Bhagavad-Gita. So here 4:9, Lord says, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my internal abode, who's Arjuna. So, what is the meaning of this one? Can you explain?
What is the meaning? What do you think it means?
That if you know the Lord's appearance and his activities, so you will be free from all the activities, material activities and all the material activities.
Yeah.
And you will attain Lord.
Yeah. Freed from reactions of all material activity.
So it is very easy to know the appearance of Lord and his activities.
Yeah. If we hear from the right source, we can know. You just have to hear and accept, then you can know. It doesn't have to be made more difficult.
And one more. Just now I was reading down Krishna book, where Lord Krishna is giving blessing to Banasura that he will be immortal. Whereas Lord Brahma, Hiranyakashipu is asking him, he's saying, nobody is immortal, I am not immortal also. Brahma is not immortal also. But here he is giving benediction to Banasura to be immortal.
Who's giving benediction?
Krishna.
Krishna can give benediction. Brahma can't give that benediction. Vishnu can grant, he's Mukunda, he can give immortality. Brahma can't do that.
So the mercy of Lord is there for anyone who surrender to him. He can give him immortality.
For sure. For sure. Jagvadeham punanjanvanaiti. We can't give what we don't have, Krishna. Even Brahma is not immortal. But Krishna is always situated in immortality, and he can give immortality. Okay? Something else?
Maharaj, I was just asking about the position of Garuda.
Excuse me?
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I was asking about Garuda. So Garuda, you said that the sage cursed him that he
A
would
little
be...
slower, if you would, please.
The sage cursed him, he will be killed if
That's not any slower than it was before.
The sage cursed him that he will be killed, you said,
Yes.
Garuda, if he comes to that pond, that place.
Yes.
So how is it Garuda, can he be killed? Like he's an eternal servant of Lord.
Yeah, he can't actually. The Prabhupada mentions he's immune to curses. But therefore, what did it do? It just came back on the Muni, that the Muni had to suffer. Garuda sometimes respects the curse, all right. But he's not subject to the cursing of ordinary sages even. So it had no effect on Garuda, but the effect came on the sage. Just like that Ambarish Maharaj wanted to punish, the Durvasa Muni wanted to punish Ambarish Maharaj. So instead, Durvasa became subject to the discipline of the Sudarshan Chakra. There was no harm to Ambarish Maharaj, but Durvasa put himself in difficulty by offending a Vaishnava. Okay. Something else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. I was thinking if we feel like we have committed Vaishnava aparad or offended a Vaishnava, especially in Vrindavan, is there a way that we can rectify that?
Yeah, ask forgiveness. We feel that we've offended a Vaishnava, then we should approach the Vaishnava, ask to be forgiven. Yeah. And admit our mistake and pray to be forgiven.
Also, because I feel like sometimes you can think things in the mind that maybe are judgmental or offensive. Like well,
at least we should rectify our minds.
Yeah.
Something else?
Hare Krishna, just for clarity on that point, so it means for a mental offense, just for clarity on that point, it means that for a mental offense, we don't need to ask verbal forgiveness.
We don't need to beg forgiveness.
Verbally.
Yeah, in some places it's said that there's no reaction for it. But you may also say, I was thinking, just who was that? That maybe it was Gadadhar Pandit with Ramananda, right? Forgive me, I was thinking this. Sometimes we may do that. No harm. Of course, if we reveal everything that's on our mind and all the offenses, there's no end to it. Because sometimes it may be felt, we don't do anything specific, but the person can understand this person is avoiding me, or they sort of wince when they see me. So then if we correct our mentality, then we can say, please forgive me, I was thinking this, but now I see that. No harm. Good. Something else? Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, coming to Vrindavan as a new year, people come to Vrindavan. So is they having some pious activities there? That's why they are coming, or they come for their happiness?
Even if they come for their happiness, people come to Vrindavan on New Year's. Is it because of their pious activity or for their happiness? Even if they come for their happiness, it's their pious activity. They could go to some club or bar for their happiness. They could go celebrate somewhere. But they think, let me go to Vrindavan. And that's their pious credit. Some may actually think that the New Year's beginning, let me offer my respect to the Lord and so on. They may deeply feel something, and that's, even if they think, now let me go to Vrindavan I'll get the Mathurika Beta, and I'll, enjoy this, I'll enjoy that. Still, they're thinking, let me come to Vrindavan. That's their pious credit. That's their pious credit. Even we see people come to dance in front of the deity and take videos to show their friends and, all this nonsense. But somehow they've come to Vrindavan. They could be taking a video in some impious place, and somehow they're attracted to Vrindavan. And they're very fortunate. If someone spends even a moment in Vrindavan, it's their good fortune. So they've chosen, they could start the year any way they want, according to what karma allows. But they think, let me come to Vrindavan and start the year in Vrindavan. Oh, how fortunate.
Thank you.
Still in India, people, if they get some vacation time, they think, let me visit some holy place. Go to Dwarka, go to Nathdwar, go to Tirupati, someplace. How fortunate. And in America, Europe, they're thinking how to go to some resort and just behave like animals. But still in India, people, if they get some time, they think, let us go to such and such holy places. So very pious.
One more point. If they come for their sense gratification, just like some people, like they take alcohol, or some people, they come and take the alcohol and this one in Vrindavan. So what do you say about that one?
It's not very good to perform sinful activities in Vrindavan. Prabhupada said if you perform pious activities in Vrindavan, the effect is magnified. And if you perform sinful activities in Vrindavan, the effect is magnified. So it's not very good to come to Vrindavan. Is not meant for sinful activities. So if they want to perform sinful activities, better to go to Delhi.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, this question of this Mataji reminds me one incident that happened in our Shastra. I don't know the exact which place it took place. When Ashtavakra, one sadhu was moving, Ashtavakra, one sadhu was moving, and one devotee was in penance, he was in samadhi or something, and he saw in the samadhi, saw some Krishna Leela or something, and he was smiling charmingly, chuckling like, So he just, Ashtavakra was, being a very awkward kind of position. He thought this fellow is laughing at me, and he cursed him, and he has to, face the consequences of that penance. So sometimes, you don't have any intent to cause any harm to anyone, and you just thinking, you're trying to do something good for others, even for Vaishnavas, and you have to face the adverse impact of that, thing, and you just left for nothing. I mean, how to reconcile that thing?
The saying is about the material world, no good deed goes unpunished. So that's the material world, padam padam yadvi padam. Even when you're trying to do something good, things can go, of course. What's beyond our control, what can we do? Even that, Parikshit Maharaj inadvertently cursed or offended a sage. And so many things can happen. So at least what's within our power, we should try to, as far as it's within our power, we should try to avoid offenses. What's beyond our power? What can we do?
Maharaj, is it our karma or what?
Maybe our karma, Krishna's arrangement. Parikshit Maharaj was Krishna's arrangement. Sometimes it may be our karma. Tate nukampam susamikshama. Even if there's some, if we think we were innocent and there's some adverse effects, still we should take it, Krishna's mercy. Is that okay? Okay. Something else? Mm-hmm.
So, Hare Krishna. So from Prabhu's question about unknowing offenses that we make in the course of just living, it seemed like we always have to be asking for forgiveness, for offenses we committed knowingly or unknowingly. But then if we just walk around constantly asking, then that also sounds insincere. I know Guru Maharaj says, sometimes people are just always asking for forgiveness for everything, and it's like too much.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering about that, because I don't really know what to do if someone just takes offense at everything that you do, but it's not about them.
Someone takes offense at everything we do.
Yeah, but it's not related to them.
It's not.
It's not about the person, but they get offended.
They just get offended.
Yeah. Then
What can we do? We try to satisfy the person as far as possible. And to the extent that it's not possible, what can we do? Sometimes people are unreasonable. So we try, give it our best shot, and at least you tried. And of course, one has to, we try to be conscious that maybe we've unconsciously committed offenses, but if we go around, please forgive my offense, please, and you become obnoxious, and that's another offense.
Yeah, and it sounds insincere if you're always doing it.
Yeah. But there's sort of customary occasions for expressing these things. Typically, we invite some guests, and when we're bidding farewell to the guest, we ask permission to be excused for any offenses we committed. And usually, we didn't commit any offense, but you never know. So that's sort of a customary occasion. Not insincere. If I committed some offense, and that's good. Can try to beg to be excused, or if sometimes we have to do things that we know might be taken offensively. We have some duty, and chances are that someone will be offended. So, let me apologize in advance, or apologize. Yes. Switch. Yeah.
Same like this, Mataji said, unknowingly, if we make offense, we can ask forgiveness. Unknowingly, if we make offense to the unknown persons, unknown persons, is there any way to solve this?
Jiva Goswami says constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord. for offenses that we may not know about or aren't able to cure, then we can go on sincerely chanting the holy name of the Lord.
That means every day we are chanting 16 rounds, we can chant extra. Maharaj?
I don't know that it's numerical. I must have committed 3 offenses, so I should chant 6 extra rounds or something. Actually, Jiva Goswami says constantly chant. He doesn't put a cap, 2 extra rounds, 4 extra rounds. He says chant constantly. Yes.
Hare Krishna. I'm not sure if this question is already asked, but in the pastime with Sobari Muni, there seems to be a link that comes up between an offensive mentality. There seems to be a link that comes up between an offensive mentality.
Could you hear that?
Okay, all right. In the pastime with Sobari Muni, there seems to be a link.
There's a link
that comes up between committing an offense and the emergence of material desires.
Yeah. That's called fall down. That's mentioned in, yes, but your question.
Yeah, so if we find that desires emerge in our heart, is this indicative of offensive actions?
It can be, yeah. If we're finding that we're becoming infected by material desires, it can be because of past offenses. In the Nectar of Devotion, it's said that the effect of offenses on one's devotional service becomes like the waning moon. One's devotional service becomes like the waning moon. We speak of the waxing moon of devotional service from Sankirtan, but by offenses it dwindles, becomes like the waning moon. So that can happen. We find that in the life of, was it Ramchandra Puri? Ramchandra Puri was a devotee of some kind, but he became critical of the Vaishnavas. And the result of becoming critical of the Vaishnavas is he became more critical of the Vaishnavas, and still more critical. Then it came to the point where he was even critical of his own Guru Maharaj. Thought that he could, his Guru Maharaj, Madhavendra Puri, was leaving this world, lamenting, I couldn't see Krishna. And the Ramchandra Puri, his disciple, Guru Maharaj, why do you say that? Krishna's everywhere. He's the all-pervading super soul, like the Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan, like instructing him. So Madhavendra Puri said, just get out of my sight. If I die seeing your face, I won't be able to go back to Godhead. So it's called Guru Aparad. So Guru Aparad is very serious. Guru Avagya, Guru Aparad, and Vaishnava Aparad. So the effect is that one's devotional service can be damaged, seriously damaged. We should be careful.
Marsh, then a follow-up question. Can offenses be graded? Like, are there big offenses and small offenses? Can offenses be graded?
Can offenses be
graded?
Graded.
Like, are they big offenses?
Yeah, there's
small
just
offenses?
like we hear that the Bhrigu Muni offended, first he offended Brahma, then he offended Shiva, then he offended Vishnu. So the mental, corporal, verbal and corporal are progressively more offensive.
And if so, then, because we see with Subari Muni, there was this big offense. But can little offenses build up? And
Yeah, if we commit an offense here, offense there. There was some American politician who was talking about government spending. He said $1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you're talking big money. So an offense to a Vaishnava, another offense. They may be small, but yeah, they can build up. Like in Ayurveda, there's two kinds of overeating. One is if you eat a little bit of, very heavy food, then that can cause indigestion. But if you eat a lot of light food, that can also cause indigestion. So one big offense or lots of little offenses, we should try to avoid offenses. Amanina amanadena. Just if we can be offenseless, that itself is a big deal in this world. As conditioned souls, we have a tendency to be offensive. We become proud, we become arrogant, we become critical, we become selfish, and then we commit offenses. So we should try to become humble and meek.
Marge, when I hear become offenseless, then it feels like that's the pure devotee. It's going to be a long time.
Anyway, we have to work on it. And Krishna may work on us also, smash us now and then. That helps us out. Kaliya, that was Krishna knocked the stuffing out of him. So all the poison and the accumulated pride and anger were smashed. Special mercy. But if we can give up our arrogance and pride voluntarily, that's better. Have an easier time of it. Even Prabhupada at the end was sincerely requesting his godbrothers to forgive his offenses. In the course of preaching, I had to say some things that were not so good. Please forgive me. And very sincerely, Prabhupada was saying. Especially, we should try to avoid offending advanced Vaishnavas. You should try to avoid offending any Vaishnavas, but especially to offend advanced Vaishnavas will be very corrosive to our devotional service. I can think of instances. We should try very strenuously, not that we become so big that we can criticize advanced Vaishnavas. What is that? Shru Shru Shaya Bhajana Vigya Mananya Manya Indadi Shunya Vidamipsita Sangalabdva. Advanced Vaishnavas we should be very keen to serve. Because Nindadi Shunya, they're devoid of the tendency to criticize others. I remember after Prabhupada's disappearance, some of our leaders committed very serious offenses to Srila Bihar Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, insulting him quite grievously. And not without consequences. But anyway, at some point, the GBC sent a group, a delegation, you could say, to see him and apologized. Actually, it was sort of, what should we say, mixed intentions, because Srila Sridhar Maharaj had attracted quite a number of ISKCON devotees, and he was something of a, what would you say? That group was seen as somewhat competitive to ISKCON, and the ISKCON leadership was feeling it, So they wanted to offer apologies in part because it was the right thing to do, and in part they're, like, can we call a truce and we'll leave you alone if you leave us alone. Sort of, can we cut a deal here? And so they sent a delegation headed by Tamal Krishna Goswami. And I was also there, toward the beginning of the meeting, Tamal Krishna Maharaj explained that we feel that we've offended you and we wanted to ask your forgiveness. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, from my side, I never felt that you offended me. Although we'd offended him quite grievously. He said, from my side, I never felt that you offended me. He said, but if you think that you offended me, then formally I forgive you. And it became clear to most who were there that, this is not a person with whom we, may start negotiating or something like this. He is an exalted Vaishnava. And we should be very careful, especially not to offend advanced Vaishnavas. So Muni didn't just curse any Vaishnava, he cursed Garuda. That was serious business. So particularly those who were heart and soul dedicated to Krishna, they're very dear to Krishna. In the whole 12th chapter, Yomad Bhakta Same Priya, Yomad Bhakta Same Priya, very dear to me. So if we offend those who are very dear to Krishna, we'll get it. There'll be consequences. So there are gradations. But then again, we should be careful not to offend even the small Vaishnavas. There's a story, not directly related to Vaishnava aparats, but this point of offending the smaller players. This story was told to me by Srinathji Prabhu, who was an industrialist, prominent industrialist, who was told this story by his father, who was also prominent industrialist, member of parliament also, if I remember. There was an elephant, and the elephant was taking pleasure in stomping on ants. And the ants would go in their little columns, and the elephant would see and just take pleasure in stomping on them. So the ants had a meeting that this elephant is, whenever he sees us, he just stomps on us, and he's exterminating us by this. So one ant said, "You don't worry, I'll do something." So while the elephant was sleeping, that ant crawled into the elephant's ear and began moving around, and drove the elephant mad. And mad elephant, they put them down and so on. So he drove the elephant mad, destroyed the elephant. So the instruction was that don't neglect even the little guy. If you're in business, the small customer, not that you say it's just a small customer, we can do what we like with him. But everyone should be respected, even the small guys. Dhruva Maharaj's stepmother offended him, and he wasn't even a Vaishnava. But later he became a Vaishnava and she had to suffer. So we don't know.
Marge, about that story, Uttama, is his death also a reaction? Uttama, the brother.
That's according to his karma, he had to die at some point. So that happened. But especially it's mentioned about Suruchi.
With Subari Muni, it feels like when the offensive mentality is there, we can be very self-righteous about it. He feels he's chasing a good thing. And that's the hard thing, that we catch the offense late.
Yeah, one becomes filled with a sense of being, I'm not quite sure, I don't think I've seen the cartoon, but there's a cartoon Crusader Rabbit. Anyway, the idea is that, you're the person who's going to bring, you're like this, El Salvador, the savior of the downtrodden, the afflicted, you're going to save the day. You're the, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You're you're going to be the hero. And especially men can be bewildered when, they're going to save some damsel in distress and all of that. Or when there's a crowd of women looking on. Maya works that way. So it's a kind of intoxication. One thinks that I'm rescuing the situation. All these people are looking toward me. And then one thinks I'm the doer. Kartaham iti manyate. And forgets that everything is finally in the hands of Krishna. So we should be careful not to be carried away by the sense of being God's gift to the downtrodden, the rescuers of the damsels in distress, the only hope for the disenfranchised. They're all looking to me. We may have some duty to perform to save some situation as far as possible, but we should remember that it's Krishna who's finally able to do anything. And we should be careful not to be carried away by false ego. I'm great. I did this, I did that. They're all looking to me, and I'm the one. That false heroic mentality can and again, the internet and social media can serve as amplifiers for that. You know, some tiny fool who would be no one, who would be ignored by any sensible person, gets on the internet and becomes, Superman. And he makes some cutting remark and gets 5 or 7 likes, and way to go, Prabhu, you really, told it like it is, and blah, 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 blah. And then starts growing and growing and growing. And he becomes great in his own mind. And the more he spouts foolishness, the greater he becomes. And what is he doing? Criticizing this one, that one, blah, 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 blah. He becomes a mouse. One should be careful not to allow the internet to destroy one's devotional qualities and one's devotional life. Internet is dangerous. People will say things there they'd never say to your face. So we should be careful. One way of being careful is just close your account.
The society in general at the moment seems highly sensitive, and people take offense so easily, sometimes not even at an actual action, at a perception of an action or something like that. And we've seen people end up rejecting a guru, and I was wondering what happens to that person and what happens to the guru, in a relationship like this where they've rejected their guru and now.
What happens to the guru is, he may be sorry, but it's not the end of his life. But it's a great misfortune for the disciple. If he's needlessly rejecting a person who's a Vaishnava, that can be a great disaster for him. And there's this thing called obsessiveness that one needs to guard against. Some psychologist or sociologist did a survey of like the standard, what is it, Minnesota something personality index. There are various indexes, they're forms that with questions to be answered, and they're evaluated, and you get a psychological profile of the person according to sort of established standard. And maybe this was during the so-called brainwashing days, and the psychologist was sort of wanted to set things right by showing that the devotees were not crazy and so on. Anyway, for whatever reason, they did this survey, and they found that the devotees were pretty much like everybody else, sort of standard expectation, but slightly more obsessive than slightly more obsessive. So, of course, obsession is not always bad. Thomas Alva Edison was obsessed with the idea of making a successful light bulb. So obsessiveness is not inherently bad. Anyway, you found that devotees are somewhat more obsessive than others. But one has to be careful about being obsessed with perceived faults in others. Somebody does something and we start thinking about it and then obsessing over it. And pretty soon we commit offenses. There were two temples and they were sort of at one another's throats. And the leaders were at one another's throats, and you'd go to one and they'd be talking about the other, you go to the other, they're talking about the one. And so much of it was, it was nothing, but they were going on and on and on and on. So a story came to mind. This is not a Shastric story, but close. It's an old vaudeville story. Vaudeville was a form of entertainment in America, especially the Northeast. Comedians and so on would have some presentation. So this is a story that there was a man who was traveling in his car in some remote area, and he had a flat tire. And he had a spare, but he didn't have a jack. So what to do? He thought, well, I'll just keep going, and I'll walk till someplace there has to be a house, and they'll have a car and they'll have a jack, and I'll borrow the jack and I'll fix the tire, and then I'll drive back to the house and I'll return the jack. And it's problem solved. So it's okay. So he starts walking. And as he's walking, he's thinking that, this will work. Somebody will be there and they'll lend me the jack. But what if they don't lend me the jack? What if they have it, but they won't give it? Then what will I do? And then he thought, but why shouldn't they lend me a jack? I mean, I'm a decent person. I'm dressed normally. I'm not crazy or anything, so it shouldn't be an issue. Why, no reason why they should not lend me a jack. And what kind of person anyway would it be that wouldn't lend you a jack? I mean, my car is broken down. I'm a stranger here. I'm in difficulty. Any decent person would, under those circumstances, want to help you out. And how miserly would you have to be? What kind of a creep would you have to be not to help a person in need? I help people when they're in difficulty. Why won't they help me when I'm in difficulty? I mean, they just have to be the most obnoxious and stupid. And he's going on like this. Finally, he comes to a house, and he knocks on the door. Somebody answers and opens the door, and the traveler yells at him, "Keep your damn jack." Manoritena sati tavatomi. Mind gets rolling, and pretty soon you're in outer space. We should be careful not to let the mind run away with itself or run away with us like that, so that we create needless aparats. If we have to do something, we should look for the least just like in surgery, what's the least we can do? They don't say, let's go all out and replace his whole body. What's the smallest intervention we can get away with? So if we have to do something, sometimes it's our duty, but not that we should be like crowing and profiling and bad-mouthing and laying it on the line and calling a spade and broadcasting to the world how bad these so-called Vaishnavas are. That's not going to help us. Or anyone else. It'd be bad for us, bad for the people who read it or hear it. And we should try to be careful. Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead. All right.
Hope it's not the long one. We recently heard in the news that Pope Benedict XVI passed away. And I was just reflecting on a few things about his profile. So it made me think a question, like how far we go to protect the institute and the philosophy, what is right.
How far do we go to protect the institution?
Yes.
And the philosophy?
And what is right and what is wrong.
And what is right and what is wrong? That's rather a large question. I think we're not going to...
Maybe we leave it for tomorrow.
Yeah. How far? 10 miles, 15 miles? Yeah. It's rather a broadly worded question. But we should act according to Shastra. We should determine what to do and what not to do from Shastra. Tasmat Shastra Pramanam Te Karya Vyavastate. Gyatva Shastra Vidhanam. When the cow and bull were refusing to identify the culprit, then Parikshit Maharaj, you must be Dharma himself, because you know the principles of religion. We should try to know what are the Shastric directions on what to do and what not to do. Karma Kartamiharasi. Should we have kirtan? Who would like to lead kirtan? You'd like to lead. Okay, you're in business.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare